Welcome to Strip Cover, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for a video which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, and number two being the Emily Dickinson playlist, a playlist of Emily Dickinson poetry discussions. This is a poem I do not believe I have ever talked about, but honestly, we're getting up there in numbers, so it's hard to remember exactly what has been done, and the list is too long to simply scroll through. The poem in question today is Some Keep the Sabbath Going to Church, and it reads as such. Some keep the Sabbath going to church. I keep it staying home, with a bobolink for a chorister, and an orchard for a dome. Some keep the Sabbath in surplice. I just wear my wings, and instead of tolling the bell for church, our little sexton sings. God preaches, a noted clergyman, and the sermon is never long. So instead of getting to heaven at last, I'm going all along. Now, I think that it's maybe necessary sometimes with Emily Dickinson to almost really translate. So these are words, bobolink and chorister, surplice, which might not be the most um, ready at hand, right? This is a bobolink. The bird right here is a bobolink. A chorister is a member of a choir, especially a child or young person singing the treble part in a church choir. So this line right here is saying, instead of your choir, I have a bobolink. I am sitting in nature. Nature is proving to be my church. Surplice here, for anyone who might not know, a loose white linen vestment varying from hip length to calf length, worn over a cassock by clergy, acolytes, and choristers at Christian church services. Basically, just saying, instead of a surplice, instead of religious garb, I wear my wings. Once again, drawing the necessary link between nature and the religious. But I think there's one other, what did I do here? There's one other word that might really require some deeper digging. Sabbath. We all kind of know what Sabbath is. A day of religious observance and abstinence from work, kept by Jewish people from Friday evening through Saturday evening, and by most Christians on Sunday. But there's another definition of Sabbath: a supposed annual midnight meeting of witches with the devil. Now, Emily Dickinson's relationship with the religious, relationship with the divine, relationship with God in general is a difficult one. And maybe ironically, they are poems like this that point these things out the strongest. There are people who believe that Emily Dickinson was particularly religious who would point at a poem like this and say, look, she knows all the words. She might be keeping her Sabbath a little bit differently than in church. But what she's talking to in this poem is saying the divine is incredibly important to me. The divine is in nature. I choose to believe that rather than in a church pew, they are at the foot of my garden where these things ring most true. The non-religious types, the people who think that Emily Dickinson's relationship with religion was more strained than that, would point to the fact that, yes, this is a poem that's very much about religion, but it's very much not about Christianity. Meaning, probably meaning that to those people, this poem probably feels more like a spiritual guide than a religious guide. There are other poems which point more strongly towards both of these conclusions for Emily Dickinson, that she was devoutly Christian or that she was strained in her beliefs. Now, I have to think of how to say this carefully because coming out of my mouth, this will sound one way that I don't want it to. I think that it is a hallmark of intelligence to struggle with religion. Not necessarily to find oneself atheistic, but the struggle in the religion, I think, is natural for a not just intelligence, but for someone who really examines the beliefs. I think that these things are difficult to believe simply through credulity. I think that someone of Emily Dickinson's intellectual capacity would have had difficulties simply accepting things by being told to accept them. This is not to say no one should believe in their religion. This is to say that taking a religion seriously means to question it. These types of poems, in my opinion, with Emily Dickinson, when you look at someone like Emily Dickinson, I've talked on this channel pretty extensively about how Harold Bloom compared Emily Dickinson with William Shakespeare, saying that basically, outside of Shakespeare, there is no real intellectual power comparable to Emily Dickinson. And I think that's true. And I think that Shakespeare is someone else, obviously, through the time where Shakespeare was writing, where religion could get you killed. And for Shakespeare to have, in The Merchant of Venice, supplied the "If you prick me, do I not bleed?" that monologue to someone who would have been strongly detested in his time, right? A Jewish character, is evidence enough that Shakespeare struggled with his religion. Again, not to say that he did not accept a God, not to say that he was secretly an atheist, none of those things. I don't believe those things. I don't know if I believe those things with Shakespeare. I think that Emily Dickinson and her struggle with religion came down to, we do not understand God. If I do not understand God, why am I going to stand in a building with someone who tells me they do understand God? That makes me very distrustful. I think that is where Emily Dickinson was with religion. I think that Emily Dickinson and her religion was a struggle for her, I think, because of poems like this, to take things that are in those pages with which she did not agree and just say, okay, I'm wrong, right? I don't think that she was able to, with intellectual honesty, say that. There is one other weird little thing about this poem worth mentioning. Some keep the Sabbath in surplus. I just wear my wings, and instead of tolling the bell for church, our little sexton sings. Now, the very next line, God preaches, a noted clergyman, is stating that God himself is present, but I think that this is the sort of hippy-dippy relationship with God, saying that nature itself is God. I don't think that this is Emily Dickinson claiming to live in the Garden of Eden, but Emily Dickinson does say, I just wear my wings. What wings? What wings does Emily Dickinson have? Is this a reference towards being angelic, or is this a reference again to the birds? I think we have more evidence towards it being a reference to the birds. but it is then implying that our speaker here is a bird. How loosely are we to take that? Are we to take that in such literal manner as to say that Emily Dickinson is once again speaking as someone else, as something else, and accept this as Emily Dickinson personifying a bird, in which case it would be strange for the bird to attend Mass? I'm not sure I have a particularly strong reading on that aspect of this poem. I just wear my wings. If you were to sit down and make a direct interpretation of this poem, that would be with what you had to wrestle. What is our speaker claiming to be? I just wear my wings. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, there's poetry on the channel every Monday, and there are plenty of other videos and playlists on the channel as well. And I hope to have you back for the next one.